TO Blaze.
Hey there, this is Tio bringing you the fourth and easily the longest video in my life support series. This is a monster of a video because I've got so much good craft building footage to share with you guys. I tried to speed up the portions of the video where I could, and unfortunately, for everything that I tried to cram into it, this is about as short as I can make it. So anyway, as you can see on screen, I'm working on my Eve station, and I'm building it in modules. You'll get to see the modules come together. You get to see the whole station in one piece. Then I'll break everything back apart and build the launch vehicles for them, assemble everything in orbit. You get to see all the 9 yards. So here's the gravity module. I'm making a gravity ring just for fun. Again, this is science mode, so cost is no issue. Get to be as excessive as I want, kind of going for aesthetics, and yeah, kind of also going with the whole theme that the Kerbals have to survive in space. So if they're traveling to Eve over those long months, then they're going to want some artificial gravity. So that's what this ring is going to provide. So I'm going to go ahead and, I'm assuming in the next bit of footage, I'm going to go ahead and add a new module to the station. So I'm planning for a small crew, and anytime I go to Eve, I'd like to also plan for a little rendezvous. I'd like to touch the atmosphere of Eve briefly with a science probe, maybe even a Kerbin. So you probably also see I'm going to build a little vehicle that's going to accomplish that maneuver. So starting to add some modules onto the station. I've got my gravity ring, obviously, and next to that is the motor that's going to spin it. And yep, again, lots of footage. I don't know how I'm going to talk through all of this. So yeah, the Kerbal Space Program 2 not coming out, or not leaving early access for quite a while. If you guys haven't already, if you're new to this series, this is my attempt of breathing a little life back into Kerbal and Kerbal Space Program 1. If you haven't already given a life support mod a try, I definitely would recommend it. So that's what you see on screen here. I'm installing some of the smaller diameter and larger diameter supply modules. The small diameter ones are to give me a little flexibility if I decide to do some longer little missions around Eve, for instance, with a smaller vehicle. I can grab some of those modules, and again, just gives me a little design flexibility on the fly once I'm actually at Eve. I'm going to go ahead and build out more of the station. The longer these stations get, especially with the smaller diameter docking ports, the wobblier they can get. So I'm going to maybe use some struts. I'm not sure if I remember to do it in this design, but some of my other long wobbly space stations, I definitely add lots of struts. It's another beauty of EVA construction. You can edit and position those struts as you need. So that's what the station is going to start to look like, with the panels and everything all extended, looking cool. I like to add those heat exchangers, I forget what they're called, for aesthetics as well. Again, also kind of going for some realism, I suppose. You don't need those typically to disperse heat, but I think it looks cool, so I'm going to add them. Adding some more key components for every space station, especially one this large. You're going to need lots of reaction wheels. I like to add quite a few docking ports there on the front. You see I've got 4. Probably add a couple towards the rear. Got lots of batteries. Another thing that I learned in this playthrough is how all the components draw a lot of power, especially that mobile processing lab. So I actually don't even know that I have one on the design yet. I didn't see one, but I'm most likely going to add one. So I like to add a few robotic parts here and there, especially to the antenna, because in theory those antenna need a point back at Kerbin. So adding some robotic parts. Yeah, I don't have the mobile processing lab yet, so I'm assuming I'm going to add one of those. Would only make sense to do that because the trip to Eve takes so long. You can load it up, the mobile processing lab, with the experiments either from around Kerbin or from yep, there you go. I'm going to add 2, one on each side of the gravity ring, I believe. That's what that looks like I'm doing anyway. That is the current plan. So, but yeah, load them up with experiments on your way to Eve, And during that whole time warp, that whole journey there, they're generating science. Might as well, right? So slap on some more port. Yep, there you go. I mentioned using struts to stiffen everything up. So I'm going to add these structural members, and when they are aligned like this, I can run struts across them, and should stop the whole station from wobbling too much. So definitely wouldn't recommend building a station in so many segments without something to stiffen things up. I've seen some folks use multiple sets of docking ports in parallel to keep things stiff, and that always concerns me. Number one, it's hard to get things aligned perfectly, and number two, when something's too rigid, and if it's using docking ports, sometimes the game can start to pull it. The vehicle is going to tear itself apart. So anyway, I go with struts. Here's that little atmosphere probe. No, actually, this looks like a return probe. So it's a science mission. I'm sorry, a science playthrough. So I'm going to collect a lot of experiments when I get to Eve. I'd like to leave the station around Eve, obviously. So this would be a return vehicle for some of the experiments. So you can run the experiments, stick them in this little probe, send this back to Kerbin, run the experiments again, and load them in the mobile processing lab that stays around Eve. So this thing needs its own power, propulsion, obviously, but it doesn't need any of the life support components because this is just going to be an unmanned probe. So I might create two of these. There you see I'm adding it as a subassembly, so I can just slap it on to the station. Sometimes I'll add multiples of little crafts like that. They don't add a whole lot of mass. And again, this is a science playthrough. Yep, I'm adding two. Why not? So it'll give me, again, flexibility. No, I guess I only went with one. Either way, flexibility would be nice. So I can always send something to Gilly, collect some science, some experiments, and send that back to Kerbin if I wanted to. So yeah, the station's starting to take shape. I'd be surprised if I don't add some much smaller food and oxygen and water modules, because that's also very, very nice. I've preached flexibility with the design and using EVA construction. So having the really small resource parts was handy in some of the missions that I did in this playthrough. So here's my typical layout for the science experiments. I like to put that science junior in the middle. Sometimes I use the little structural components, plates to mount the experiments to, just so they're not mounted to the ground, the floor, or the ceiling of the that little bay. And yeah, so I'm going to start putting together the transfer stages, the launch stages. I'm going to launch all these components individually, assemble this thing in low Kerbin orbit. And I'm enjoying the science mode because I can be a little more wasteful. I'm not shooting for efficiency. When you've played as much as I have, I guess even if you've played less, if you don't enjoy the math factor of the game sometimes, like I don't, then I just do designs that are overkill sometimes. So not paying a whole lot of attention to my thrust to weight ratios all the time. I'm not really paying attention to the burn timings to have just the right amount of fuel to get into orbit and that sort of thing. Sometimes I just slap on more boosters, slap on more engines, especially if I want it to kind of look cool. So working on the solar panel module. I'm going to send this up into orbit. This is, I guess, an attempt to be a little aerodynamic more than I normally would be. I want to get this thing up into orbit in one launch. I do enjoy assembling things in orbit, so I've got probe cores. Like here, there you see I'm assembling probe cores, reaction wheels, batteries, so that each of these components can maneuver themselves. Unfortunately, in KSP1, it's not a really great way to make a Canadarm type apparatus. So I typically just do exactly like you just saw on screen. Put all the necessary parts so that the components can fly themselves into position. So, and yeah, here's one of the vehicles, launch number 3 and launch number 2. I like to number my things. I'm very organized. I got lots of naming conventions that I like to use. I've got spreadsheets of things. I've got Google Docs of things. I don't like math, but I do like managing other aspects of the design of the crafts and stuff. So there you see what the struts are going to do for me. I'm starting to add a couple struts. Got 2 mobile processing labs, so I can fit quite a large crew. There you see I'm deciding the mass of those labs might be a little too much for the outside of that artificial gravity ring, so I might have just changed the design on the fly. But that's looking like a little bit of a transfer stage to help me position the mobile processing lab. Sometimes the modules, I don't like to have too many probe cores, so I might use sort of like a tug design to put a module in a position, then I'll use the tug to go grab something else. Sometimes I'll do that. Sometimes I'll put the probe cores on all the components in the modules and I'll go that route. Really just kind of depends on what mood I'm in. And using a tug kind of adds a little complexity. You also have to sometimes add another docking port, or make sure the docking port's in the right orientation or position so that you can actually grab onto the part that you're trying to move with the tug. So, I also like to use tugs when I'm using shuttles, orbiters. When you got like a cargo bay or something, you can use a space tug to go and grab something, a piece of cargo. So yeah, trying to find things to talk about. Like I said, lots of footage. I like watching other Kerbal players design things and build things. So that's kind of what I guess I'm going for with this video. If you're still tuned in, it's because you probably enjoy that same sort of footage like me. So you can see every now and then you get a glimpse of all the different crafts that I've got. Like I said, I deleted this playthrough a long time ago, so I can't go back and walk down memory lane and see what kind of crafts I designed, but every now and then you get a glimpse of it. I like those structural tubes, how they can change lengths. That was another great feature that they've added. I think that was in one of the expansions, if I'm not mistaken, or definitely one of the updates. I decided, obviously, to go with a lot more docking ports. I went from 4 to, 5 per, so 10 at least. And then 11, 12 on each side. So a lot more docking ports. Again, flexibility is very handy. Because once you're out at Eve or one of these other celestial bodies that are far away, it's not a whole lot of fun to have to go back to Kerbin to build something to send it. It takes a lot of time. And I don't like to time warp for whatever reason. I mean, I know one of the reasons. In KSP 1 at least, the time warp can sometimes be a little fishy. Having to go in and out of physics range of certain vehicles. It's a pain in the butt to go to the tracking stations because of the loading times. So I do typically avoid making multiple trips to celestial bodies that are far away. I like to get everything in one transfer window and kind of be done with it. So sometimes I'll over-engineer things to be really, really flexible. I'll add extra batteries, extra solar panels, reaction wheels, all kinds of little components, so that when I get where I'm going, if I need to modify something, I've hopefully got everything that I would need to do that. So sometimes that also involves bringing enough Kerbals. Sometimes, especially if you're going to do EVA construction on the surface of a planet, you need lots of Kerbals to manipulate heavier parts. So yeah, so now I'm definitely going to speed up all of these launches, I think 16 times, just to get everything up in the orbit. You're going to see the station come together. In this video, we're not going to send anything to Eve. This whole mission was just to construct the station. Definitely had a lot of fun. There you see I'm using RCS, getting all the modules into position. They also have to kind of come together in the right order, obviously. So I'm going to try to put it together in the order that it should be put together. And I'm going to do a few more missions around the Kerbin system. I'm going to go back to the MUN, I believe. So you guys are going to see a little bit more practicing with the life support parts before we actually make the trip to Eve. But once we're ready, I guess we're going to send the crew up to the station. Right now the station should be empty. So there you see a quick rendezvous maneuver. I definitely took a long break from playing the game, much less recording footage and recording audio. But all of these little maneuvers, man, it's just like getting on a bike. They all come back. All the mechanics, all the quick little tricks that I've come up with came back really naturally to me. So I've been recording some footage. I'm going to definitely not wait 2 years to edit and slap some audio onto that for you guys. But I'm enjoying this walk down memory lane. I'm going to have to watch more clips before I record the audio so that I know what I'm supposed to be talking about. So, oh, there you see the spaghetti monster. Uh-oh. So I did end up going with 2 mobile processing labs, which was an interesting choice. Again, it's going to add a lot of mass to the ends of those modules on the anti-gravity ring. But so long once you get it rotating, and I guess that's an issue. So also the rotor's plenty strong enough to spin that whole ring. So getting down to a minute, but like I said, the only thing we're doing in this mission is putting this station together. There you're starting to see. Oh. Yep, didn't put everything in the right orientation, so had to disassemble a little bit, and I'm going to put the station back together. Lastly, in order to prepare for our mission to Eve, we're going to have to refuel this thing. So there's built-in tanks on the station, and had to use a lot of that fuel to get the thing into orbit and maneuver and all that. So built a payload. If you've ever had to refuel something, basically what you do is you put all the fuel tanks you would need, and then you lock them so that that fuel is not used to get the vehicle into orbit, and that helps you calculate your thruster weight and all that stuff to get the vehicle. So there you see, I'm refueling, and that's a wrap for this monster of a video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for sticking around. If you did, please leave a comment, hit the like button, and I'm looking forward to giving you some shorter videos here soon.